with the invisible Casio piano. It is another episode of Going Over. You already know who it is, Boyce LeGrand. It's your neighborhood-friendly promoter, trainer, coach, 43-year-old. In October, I'll be saying 44. Professional wrestler Zack Primetime Reeb, and I'm joined alongside my podcast partner, the Wrecking Ball, Paul Isadora, the 7-footer. And Paul, I just heard you are on a 1-hour time crunch. You've been granted 1 hour, and I've been granted 1 hour because I have something I need to do. Here we are back, Paul. We've been dilly-dallying back and forth with those very elusive Ballard brothers. How are you doing today, good sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. Just I'm dealing with automotive issues today. Yesterday, I did the brakes on my truck, and it is excellent, fantastic. But my wife's vehicle is getting some pulsations every time you stop. So we're having to take a look at that and get some stuff done. There it is. You got all of those. Where's Zicky Dice when you need them? That's a Zicky Dice reference. You're gonna have to look it up, bud. But
tell me who Zicky Dice is.
You're gonna just have to look them up, man. Then you're gonna have to start booking them. So
booking Zicky.
Yeah, I feel like I saw him on a Lee Perfetto show up in that area. But needless to say, I'm doing good, man.
I saw him at Gold Rush. I think I saw him at Gold Rush, actually. So I know who Zicky Dice is.
Got himself in phenomenal shape. So awesome, looking good. But so I think, based off of what you're just saying, yeah, we had a real tough time with those Ballard brothers, man. They're so sneaky and going behind the cars, and he was trying to find a Starbucks and maybe a Waffle House over here. Like, where can I sit? Where can I get some Wi-Fi? Stuff like that.
Definitely a Denny's. They were definitely trying to find a Denny's. They both really like to talk about their retirement cards at Denny's, by the way.
That is true. Yeah, that's coming up. September 9th of this year. They're hitting that big 5-5. So that's awesome. And the only reason I know it's September 9th is because that's also my birthday. So we share that birthday, me and the Ballard brothers.
Really?
Yep. That's why that bond, it's like scissoring almost, but maybe it's this type of bond. I don't know what type of bond we have, but it's there you go.
Me and Scott Hall, baby. Hey, say, would you like to see me shoot my machismo all over you? R.I.P. Scotty, baby. October 20th birthdays, and we, a lot of nuggets, man. A lot of nuggets were thrown out by the Ballard brothers, and one thing I really wanted to go back and forth with you on was it's crazy to me. I just keep learning, man. And I see all these guys. We talk about the guys at the seminars that are just watching. They're not partaking. And you ask them why. And they're like, hey, you don't think you can learn nothing? They're like, no, I'm good. I got this shit in the bag locked up. And I think with the recovery, the mindset, everything I've been doing, I think in the last 6 to 8 months, like a newborn baby, I think I've learned more new things than I have in this business in its entirety. And I don't mean that as in like I get what I've learned to get to this point, but at this point now, and one thing that Shane said it about, I said the finish is the most important part. And then you get this other opinion from Shane Ballard, and he says, the one he was on with us, and he says, it is, but it's from the comeback. And then you hear Shannon, I'm talking about the difference between the false and the hopes. I mean, the near falls and the falses. And I just want to reiterate on my part, because I hear everybody the last 10 years in the locker room going, cut off this, that, falsy. And it pisses me off because I'm like, no, those aren't falsies. Those are near falls. So I think I would be okay if they were saying near fall. We'll do a near fall here, a near fall there, a near fall here, a near fall everywhere. But he said something very important to me, and he said, I don't think there should be very many false finishes in a promotion in a year. Like if you're an independent wrestler, say you're fucking wrestling once a month, and you have a guy, if you can get one guy to really establish a finishing move in order for the false finish to work, where the fans have just been programmed, dilated right there to believe this thing is over. You with the choke slam, me with the super kick. He's saying, he said WrestleMania, the big guys came out and started kicking out of stuff because it was WrestleMania. They had to. It was the presentation of it. Michael's Undertaker 25, it's pretty much where the big stuff, these big false finish kickouts and a lot of near falls really came to fruition in my eyes and noticeable as a fan. But I think, there it is. So what is your opinion? What is your opinion on that? Because I believe after talking to Shannon and Shane, I think maybe 1, 2 real false finishes a year, especially in a pretty maintainable indie promotion. I get the near falls. I get them. You got to have those in the contest, but the false finish, man, like if we're going to establish a finishing move, especially on this level underneath, let's keep it.
Exactly. We talked about, and I'm going to go back to the mankind thing, right? We talked about getting thrown off of the cage, and then all of a sudden that was something that people wanted to start doing, right? I'm going to do these big moves, a bunch of them in a match, things like that, because of the attention that you got as a result. And I think it's the same thing, right? You have these false finishes in these big matches like that. And then people go, wow, man, that got such a huge reaction. I think I'm going to do that in my match, right? I'm going to do a false finish in a match. And then it just got oversaturated where everyone is thinking, well, you get a big reaction if you do a false finish, but you get a big reaction if you do a false finish every once in a while. But you don't get a big reaction if you do a false finish every match that you're in, right? So that's the difference. Is I think people are getting it confused where they think, oh well, I'm looking for that big reaction. Everybody wants the holy shit chant, and whatever the big chant is at the time, right? This is wrestling, whatever. People like to hear those chants, and like you said numerous times, the holy shit chant generally isn't because this match is amazing right now. The holy shit chant is generally because, man, that guy almost killed himself right there, taking that bump, right? So I think so many people are getting those things confused, right? You get a big reaction when you don't try to hurt yourself because you're telling a great story. That's when you get a really good reaction that's actually authentic, right? It's not a big reaction because, wow, that guy just threw himself off the top of a building and landed on a concrete floor and he didn't get killed, right? Those are the big reactions people are getting, and it's like, well, your career is not going to last very long if you're doing those huge bumps like that. I think about the different times where, and we've talked, God, man, we talked about so many things with the Ballard brothers that are so interesting that we can make an entire topic of itself on those things, right? We talked about stipulation matches, for a few minutes, and I felt like that could have went for an hour on its own. We talked about the false finishes versus near falls. That could be a whole episode on its own. The mankind thing, the getting the big reaction, that's another whole episode on its own, man. And so I've got so many things running through my head right now as far as just things I wish we could have talked more to those guys about. And obviously we'll do that on another date, but it's just, I think about so many of those different things. And then obviously the training thing, the seminar before the matches, which is something that I wanted to talk to them about, because Shannon said something about, hey, when I'm training guys, I like to make sure they know that they need to kick out. They don't just get to roll the shoulder, right? Because that's lazy, and you teach people how to kick out. And so obviously he's running seminars as well. So I wanted to talk to him about that whole topic of what do you do when you got these guys who you look at and you go, this guy needs some of my input, but the guy doesn't get into the ring while we're doing a seminar, doesn't do it while we're training, right? And I think about so many times just being at a seminar or while somebody else is talking, and how engulfed I get into the situation, right? If it's something where I feel like, well, like you were doing essentially a seminar at our show, right? And I felt like I could point out things to the guys that I related with because they trained with me, that I can go, hey, do you see how Zach really engaged in the lockup right there? It looks like a fight, right? He's not just lazily grabbing onto you. He's trying to get his hands on you, man. He wants to grab a hold of you because he wants to hurt you. So jumping in there and giving some of that little input, it's not because I'm walking around the ring and I'm not paying attention. It's because I'm engaged in the whole situation. And I think there's so many guys that think they're too far in, where now I can't learn anything else. And you said it best just a few minutes ago, where you said you're learning so much. It's not like you haven't learned for 25 years, but it's these little things that we're getting from all these other guys that have been around the block, that they say something and you go, shit, that makes a lot of sense. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I feel like I'm going on a rant here, and I'm not really going in any direction. I'm just talking about a whole bunch of
you get older,
stuff.
right? Like, we're getting older, man. So when we're looking out at the card, we're like, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I can't do what Andrew Cass can do anymore. Like, there's a guy, yeah, he's a little smaller than I am, but there's a young kid, 19 years old, and what his view and movement and athleticism and how much fresh spring is in his legs is night and day compared to what's mine. Can I get in the ring with him and put something good on? I can, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be the stationary guy, you know. Athletically, I'm gonna be a base. I'm gonna be moving around. So we get out here and we see these things. We start listening more because we are figuring out, okay, how can I still be a vital part of this game? How can I be a contribution to these shows? You know, we sit here and we talk about all the time, like, man, I don't just want to be at my age going to a show and wrestling. And at first I kind of felt like when I was going to your show, I was like, oh man, I feel like a 43-year-old guy just wrestling a match. And then I looked at it in a different way. I looked at it like, oh, I'm gonna help this kid. And there was a lot of things. I think he said it was his second singles match, which I'm pretty sure that was so he had a tag match at ours. So he's probably had 4, maybe 5 matches tops, including the Battle Royal. So I think maybe we're at like 5 matches here because it was his second singles match. So like, you're not in a tag team, so what other matches could you have? But it's that point we talked about before, where at first you're listening, then you're creating, and then as you wane down, you are the guy who's no longer listening. You are wrestling people that are listening to you, so that you can get them to that next point where they're creating with other performers out there. And I saw a lot and I felt a lot in the ring. And there is a difference when you're wrestling a guy that's green. He's greener than, as Jim Cornette says, he's greener than goose shit. You know what I mean? But we're talking about the establishing and finishing moves. And I was just looking at the TV because I was watching Vengeance Day. I got about halfway through, and I'm watching, and it's like Wednesday nights on Tubi, it's Evolve, and then it's like the LFG program, and they got pro wrestlers on there now, and then they're like SmackDown, Raw, NXT, and you're like, God, there's so much programming to watch, which is really good because when coming up, we didn't have a lot of programming to watch, and we had to wait for it. But we're talking about establishing finishing moves. We're talking about making things important. And if you have so much programming, if you have NXT is your developmental, but now there's a program every Wednesday night for young guys that are probably WWE ID guys, so that they're on TV to see if they can make it to NXT. So there's just so much wrestling, including the AEW product, and they've got the Ring of Honor product. There's so much wrestling going on that I feel that it's going to be extremely hard. It's not hard to do if you do it right, but it's going to be extremely hard to Are there going to be any finishing moves left? Are there going to be any storylines to tell? Are we going to be able to really create some heels and get some solid baby? Because there's so much going on, Paul, that it's actually doing, in my eyes, a disservice. A lot of exposure, a lot of eyes on the product, but I feel like having so much is going to take away from the product in the ring, and it's going to take away from certain people trying to elevate themselves up to move up to main shows or get on the car. I mean, shit, when WWE bought everything out, we had to brand split it. We company brand splitted everything. And so, I mean, what's your thoughts on, I don't know if you knew there was going to be a minor league to the minor league developmental show coming out on Wednesday. But I mean, what is your thoughts in general, especially with wrestling promotions around here now? What is your thoughts on that with all this wrestling going on? And you can just it don't matter if it's good or bad. It's just in our face, whether we're on our phones.
Right. It's a situation where you got a lot of stuff. You know, you have a lot of places to go to watch wrestling, and hopefully all of the wrestling doesn't look all the same, right? And I think that that's the big thing is if it all looks the same, then it really doesn't matter if there's a whole lot of stuff out there to watch. We're probably not going to have a lot of opportunity to learn. But you talked about finishing moves, right? And that triggered me into something that one of the Ballards said was these things used to be finishing moves and they're not anymore. He was telling the Bushwhacker story, right? About the game analogy. Your energy bar is going lower and lower. You're getting closer to being pinned. And I just loved it because he's like, and then maybe the fans will think if he gets one more body slam, he's going to be able to finish him off, right? So maybe we need to get into that mindset where, you know, we talked about establishing a move that's going to create the opportunity to make that into a false finish. Maybe we need to rewind a little bit and we need to establish, if I hit this guy with this big body slam at my size, coming from this high up, that could finish a guy, right? Maybe we get back to that, right? You know what I'm saying? It's one of those awesome opportunities where we can, you say there's all this product out there, but there's also so much backlog of product. And I hear so many times where you do something in the ring and someone's like, wow, man, that's awesome. Where'd you get that from? It's like, oh, I was watching this this match from 83 and this is what such and such did. It's like, oh shit, you know, like it's not something new. It's just something that I was looking at and I found this and I thought it was cool and it was something that this person did. So I started doing it. You know, a lot of things. I remember Luster using giant swing, heart punch, things like that. Things that people didn't use. You know, now Cesaro uses the giant swing, right? But I remember Luster doing that where people were counting, right? And you always hear the guy that did it on TV first. That's his move, right? Mm-hmm. But I remember Luster doing that for years before I started seeing Cesaro doing it on TV and making it a big fucking deal, right? So, but I just think it's one of those deals like you could do those old school things, the heart punch, right? Boom, that stops the guy's heart momentarily long enough for you to pin him. So it could be simplistic like that. So as long as all of this new product that we get to see on TV on a regular basis isn't duplicating itself where everything looks the same, and one of the Ballards mentioned that as well, where every hot tag looked the same in tag matches they were watching. So I think that that's one of those deals as well. As long as we don't have that, where everything's a carbon copy of itself, and they talk about the copy machines, you know, a copy of a copy of a copy. Now it looks all watered down and shitty. So as long as it's not like that, it's all good, man. But you also talked about Preston Price, man. And we talked about this a couple episodes ago about the first impression, right? The guy hasn't wrestled a whole lot of matches, but we're booking this guy. And it's because he comes to the show looking good, right? He looks professional. You made a comment to me that you asked him, hey, you got any promo photos that I can put on my flyer or that I can use for a match graphic? And you said the next day he had somebody take photos of him in looking good in a suit, in gear, couple different sets of gear. It's like those are those things we were talking about with that first impression. Even though this guy hasn't wrestled a lot of matches, he's got a great look. He's professional. You ask him for something, he delivers on it. And then you're talking to him about your match afterwards, and he's intently listening to what you're saying, so he's going to get better. So all of those things, man, it's exciting, man. I don't know, man. The juices are flowing right now. I told you the other day, as you're training these guys, I'm like, I want to get in there and bump around, but it's not time yet.
Well, I don't want to bump around. I don't want to get in there and bump around. Cool. He's a cool kid, man. He definitely he got in there. He didn't even need to. He did not even need to be asked to get in there to train. Like, he just put on his working boots, put his shit on, and got in there. So, and there's a lot of holes in his game. Like, I'm not gonna lie about it. There were some bad fake punches, man. A lot of stuff that I tried to cover up. There was a lot of timing issues. There was a lot of bad stuff, but the good outweighs the bad. And when you look at how many matches he has, you're like, he's not bad at all, man. He's gonna be fine. He just needs to be in the right places with the right people and put in the right situations. And that's up to the coaches to make sure that's happening for him and make good decisions. And you said, you said old school. I could grab a fucking headlock and take you over with it, and the guy could work it on the mat a little bit, and the guy could fight and get me in a head scissor, and we can get out of that. And everyone's gonna yell, "That's wrestling!" Yeah, I mean, it's part of wrestling, but we've gotten so far away from wrestling that you get a guy like Gunther in there, just leaving dented handprints in people's chests and not doing a bunch of flippy shit. I heard Undertaker saying it, and people go, "Man, Gunther's a throwback. He's old school." It looks like that because he's not out there in flashy stuff, but he is. He's just doing what you do as a big professional wrestling bully heel in the ring. And people say, like, man, he's such an amazing wrestler. A lot of times he's kicking the shit out of those guys. So that's not like on the mat wrestling at all. He's beating the shit out of somebody, and we're not used to seeing a guy actually be a fucking heel and work as a big guy. We're not used to seeing that because there's so many big guys, and I see a lot of guys that because they can. The guy on the War Raiders team in WWE, it's like he's doing these moves and flips because he can, but he shouldn't be doing them because he's so big. Leave him for the little guys. And that's what I was saying. You were asking, we can program our own shows to be whatever we want, our own promotions, right? We can say, hey, we're going to keep the action down a little bit. But if you bring in, we mentioned him earlier, if you bring in an Andrew Cass, he's going to want to do all that stuff. So you have to minimize it by telling him, hey, don't do this, don't do that. We're trying to keep, you'd have to tell somebody like that, and you'd have to keep a close eye on it. Or you could just simply say, this kid is going to be the only kid diving out of the ring. This kid's the only one who's going to be doing springboards and moonsaults, and that's his thing. And the problem is there's a lot of little guys in pro wrestling now, and they're trying to do it. And we had talked about the Adam Thornstowe thing before, where he does the standing moonsault. He does the standing one to the cover, the pin in the cover. And it's like, why are you guys doing this? Well, because we can get around. We can make it. Okay, you can make it, but he makes it look like $1 million, and you're never going to make it look better than him. So just don't do it. So I think you gotta, if you want to separate your show differently, it's okay to have a guy who does a lot of fast-paced spots. It's okay to have a guy who dives out of the ring or through the ropes and springboards and does stuff like that. But if you're really going to run a real promotion, especially with not as big a roster, pick your guy. Pick your guy that's going to be your guy, that's going to do that, and let him do that. Let him crash and burn on that. Let him hit the big moves. Let him get the oohs and ahs for the high risk. And then maybe down the road, someone comes along that does the high risk just as good or better. And that's why these two team up. and win a tag team championship. Or that's why these two have a feud and ended in a ladder match, because, or a cable X division match or whatever. But that's why you do this. You know, my coach said the other day, I said, well, this guy does the ankle lock. So I told the other guy not to do it. And my coach said, what's the problem with both guys doing it? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, I mean, if both guys, and one's a bad guy, one's a good guy, they're both doing the ankle lock, it's going to lead to something. They're going to run into each other, and we're going to see who has the best ankle lock. And that's just the story right there of the match, and it's completely different than everybody else.
Absolutely. You make a great point there, man. You have those guys. I mean, we talk about the guy that's going to kick the shit out of somebody. You have the gigantic guy. You have all these types of matches that you can do, and that triggered into my head that somebody was asking me the other day about why don't we see those matches anymore where there's a disqualification if you throw somebody over the top rope, or there's a disqualification if you throw the closed fist, right? Why don't you see that anymore? And it's like, oh, I don't know, man. It's evolved too much where people think that's too hokey, right? But just like you're saying about, like, you make your show whatever you want it to be, you could have that. You could even have a championship that revolves around specifically that type of match. So you could definitely take your show and you can mold it any way you want with these different types of personalities that you have. That way you don't have, like I just say, it's great to have a lot of product out there, a lot of stuff to watch, but if it all looks the same, who gives a shit, right? But if you have the high flyer guy that people come to see, not everybody's coming to see that guy though, right? You have the big brute guy that just kicks the shit out of everybody, but that might be too boring for some people, but at least you still got the high flyer guy that people come to see. You might have people that just like tag wrestling. So you have a tag division that's gonna get that need for those people. So you have a little bit of everything, and people use the analogy of ice cream with different types of wrestling. It's the same thing, man. You have different styles of people on your card that draw different types of fans. So you could definitely cater to a bunch of different things all in one show because you have a little bit of everything. So I think that's a great point that you make with that. You make your show however you want it to be, and you could definitely cater to the fans that like different things by making it a variety on your show where every match doesn't look exactly the same, right? We talk about sitting at the curtain and watching other matches so you don't do similar things to somebody else. It's countless times that I'm sitting at the curtain and I'm watching matches and I say to the guy that I'm wrestling, hey, they just did that spot that we were going to do something similar to that. Let's scrap that. Let's think about something else that we can do when the time presents itself, that it's a good idea that we go from me being on top to you or vice versa, wherever, that we see something on the card that we go, well, shit, they already did that. Let's not replicate it and look like we're a carbon copy of that match also, because that's one of my biggest pet peeves. And you see it when it's a lot of students that train at the same school that are wrestling, in consecutive matches. You're like, oh, that's awesome. Everyone's working the arm because that's what they were going over in training this week, right? Yeah. And it's so obvious. It's like, come on, guys. And I mentioned that to you probably months ago or weeks ago. I'm not sure how long ago, but the different cool counters that you're doing at your wrestling school, right? You're teaching some sort of cool counter, and now you have two guys from the same school, and they're using the same unique counter on each other. And it's like, okay, now this guy doesn't look unique at all because this other guy does the exact same counter to the same move. So now it looks just hokey, right? This looks like choreographed bullshit that we put together at our wrestling school while we were canning the match that we're going to do on Saturday during training on Wednesday. It's one of those deals where now it's like, okay, this looks like shit because you're not telling your students like, hey, these are a couple of cool counters, but if a guy counters you like this, don't fucking do it back to him because it's going to look stupid. So I don't know. It makes me laugh, I think, some of those times. And I know, like, you're just looking like I got something to say. You keep fucking leaning in.
Well,
You
my
got
neck
something.
hurts. My neck
Oh,
hurts.
sure.
I'm listening to you, but you said something right there, and it's like, don't debut all your students at the same fucking time. Like, Jesus, man.
Right.
Like, everybody's like, okay, we're starting the school, and these guys are still here. Everybody's a graduate at the same time, and you just debut 3 or 4 guys on one show. Why? They're not all on the same level. They're not all going to graduate at the same time. Maybe you don't have a spot on your show yet for that guy. Maybe you need a little more time. And I think that's one thing that is really helping me with thinking about characters and booking and stuff like that is the people are opening my eyes. You know what I mean? I'm looking out there and I'm going, oh, like Sergio. He's so damn entertaining. Do I ever think he's going to win a match? I don't care. Is he ever going to win a title? I don't care. If he wins a belt, it's probably going to be the most entertaining thing on the show. If he wins a match, it'll be entertaining. If he loses a match, it'll be entertaining. If he doesn't win a belt, it'll be entertaining. And he doesn't care. He's willing to go out there and show his ass. And you now have this part of your show for 15 to 20 minutes of a 2-hour show. Now you only have to worry about an hour and a half to an hour and 40 minutes of your show, minus your intermission or whatever. And you can count on this guy to go out there. And if you give him 10, he'll give you 10. If you give him 30, he'll give you 30. Well, and he's just going to go out there and entertain. So when you're looking at things, and we talked about some of your booking, he was the name that you threw in for yourself because you're like, oh shit, this, I can work with this guy. This guy can work with this guy. At the show we did in Red Bluff, I was supposed to be involved in the finish with that title change at the end. I saw 2 guys use a belt in a beatdown afterwards, and I didn't tell them not to use the belt because that's what we were doing. So I went back there. We changed the whole finish. Now I'm not going to get involved. Now I'm going to stay at the table, and I will come in and use the belt in a different way the next show. No big deal, because you don't have to do something just because you want to. You don't have to do something just because you have it planned to do it. You can take these things out. I remember sitting in the locker room at your show this last weekend with Boyce, and he's talking to the guy he's wrestling. And I walk by and I go, la, 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 la. I'll plug my ears. I don't want to hear this. Marks, joking around. And then no more than 10 minutes later, I'm over here talking to the guy I'm working. And guess who comes walking by going, la, 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 la. And we start talking to each other and we realize, oh shit, we are kind of doing the same stuff. And I don't know if it's that our styles are similar to each other, but I think it's our age that's similar to each other. So we're like, shit, why am I going to take a big move right here when I can take a sunset flip? Why am I even going to roll back for the sunset flip when I can grab the guy and punch him? Hell, why am I even going to punch him? I can miss the sun. He can move and I can punch the mat. Like, I'm thinking along the lines of stuff like this. And it's not that I can't do the other stuff anymore. Let's get that perfectly clear and straight right now. It's that I don't have to. I don't have to do it. I rode all the way there. Had a great trip. I rode all the way home. The other guy in the car cramped up and needed us to pull over. The show before, I took a couple extra bumps. And on the way home, I worked a little faster, and on the way home I was cramping up, and I had to pull over a couple times. This time I didn't have to, because I didn't go out there and overexert myself. It's like, okay, let's just say you're working a show and there's 35 fans, right? Let's just say there's 35 fans head count at a show. Why am I going to go out there and kick the shit out of myself, whether I'm 43 or whether I'm fucking 18? There's nothing to prove at this point. If you want to risk it at a young age, if you want to risk it and cock the biscuit, You just go ahead and do that, pal. Make sure you got some good country sausage gravy to pour on top of that wound, because you got to go to work in the morning. Hell, some of us, you got kids. You got to go coach basketball, bro. You can't break your leg. You can't be pushed around. You're 7 foot tall. I don't think anybody in your household would be thrilled to death like, oh, I got to push my fucking 7 foot, 300-pound dad around in a wheelchair and take him to the bathroom to take a shit. You know what I mean? And we all got to drive home. We got long drives or we got short drives. Whatever the case may be, let's be safe. Let's have fun. And let's remember one thing. It don't matter if there's 20 fans or if there's 2,000 fans. When the show starts, we've already made our money. They've already paid for the ticket. Hey, it doesn't matter if you don't take one bump or if you dive off the top of the basketball hoop while it's folded up and you're 20 feet in the air. That's just extra unwanted. And I've done it a million times. That's why I'm saying it. I'm not saying it because I'm like, that guy's a moron for doing it. My coach said, be careful when you go down to APW. Roland's going to have you diving out of that balcony for free. No way. No way. Right before I went to Japan, wrestling JJ, I go up into the upper balcony and I stand on top of the ledge. I don't know if you remember that. And I do a frog splash from like 20 feet in the air, clearing the gap in the ring and blasting JJ in the match as a no contest. And the first thing my trainer said, 15, 17, whatever years later when he got out was, see, I told you, man. I told you you'd be jumping out of that balcony for rolling for free for no money. And I'm like, no shit, you did tell me that. Told me that before I went down there. A couple years in, I'm doing this. So as a promoter to you young guys out there, you can call me on this if and when I book you, because I'm saying it right here on the show. But if you're willing to murder yourself for me, if you would like to set yourself on fire or a table on fire or go through 16 tables or do a 450 splash off a ladder to the outside of the ring, thumbtacks, whatever you want to do, if you're willing and wanting, if you're willing to destroy yourself on my show, feel free to do it. You feel the same way, Paul? Feel free to kill yourself. I'm not going to tell you no. I'm not going to tell you no.
Just as long as it's going to make sense, right? Just do it within the story that you're trying to tell, right?
No.
For you, it doesn't matter. For me, it's the culmination of something. Do something big because it's going to mean something. Don't do it just because. So I think it's just, we're not going to do that because we're experienced. We're a little bit more knowledgeable, and we know like you don't have to do that stuff to get the reaction. And I feel like the last couple episodes we've talked about that immensely, that you don't have to go out and do that. You can just go out there and tell a good story, and you're going to get just as good of a reaction as if you jumped off the balcony and did something crazy, right? Let's get the fans to be involved in it. Let's get them to buy in, get them their emotions involved, and then we can do the same type of thing with a lot less of an opportunity to hurt ourselves. We can definitely do that, but we definitely need to talk about those wrestlers, man. That I don't know, man. It's the frustration of what you've talked about with not wanting to get into the ring and train, things like that.
Reverse psychology, Paul.
Right, of course.
Exactly. They don't need it. They don't need it. You guys out there, if you're not feeling it, if you're not feeling it in your gut, and you feel like you know enough, and let's say the Ballard brothers, let's say Tim Thatcher, let's say Adam Thorne, let's just say a big talent. Cody Rhodes is running a seminar. He's in WWE, but he's decided to stop on in at your local pump and dump independent wrestling company and hand out some advice in the ring. Hey man, if you feel like you've come a long enough way in the business in your first couple years that you don't need to listen to Cody Rhodes, hey, don't. Trust your gut. You don't need that knowledge. I'm just telling you right now, you don't need it. You got this.
That's right. You're experienced enough as it is. You've been working. You're 5, 8, 11 years in. You no longer need anyone else's advice. Let this show be an example to you that even when you're talking to the Ballards who have been doing this for 25 years and at a super high level and have crossed paths with tons of other guys that are way more experienced. Even with those guys, if they're going to stop in and give you gold advice, if you've already been in the business long enough, you don't need to listen at all. Leave it for the young kids, the kids that are real hungry and want to get really good at this. Let them take advantage of it.
Hey,
right?
How about you ask me to watch your match, and then when I critique you on your match, you give me an excuse of why you did that? I mean, I could, I don't care if you let it go in one ear and out the other. What? Just shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, I've had guys, will you watch my match? And I do. I'm that guy. I'm the nice guy. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll watch your match and I'll critique you afterwards because I care. I really do care. And I'll go, hey, don't do this, do this. And they go, oh, I know. And I don't even waste a second anymore with them. I go, well, then if you know, why the fuck did you do it? You know, right? Why'd you do it? Or you tell them something and they come up with an excuse. Don't make an excuse. Everything's an excuse. Oh, I can't train today because my stomach hurts. I'm bubbling over here. Cool. Well, I guarantee you after training, you're going to go get some food. You're going to drive all the way home. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to hang out with your buddies. I'm pretty sure if your stomach's bubbling and the old lady says, hey, let's do it. You're not going to be like, oh no, babe. Don't leave my clothes on because my stomach's bubbling and I couldn't train. I called off at training today, so we can't have sex because my stomach is just bubbling. It's like, just knock it off. Do you want to do this or not? And that's what we have to ask ourselves. And I hear from you so many times, and we were talking the other day. I love listening to you talk because sometimes you think that you're not mean enough to people, or you're not asserting the way you feel enough to people. And I'm going, oh, you are. It's just so passive and so smart ass that you're actually saying what could be said very mean to somebody, but you're saying it so nice. Like I always tell people, I could tell you you're a piece of fucking shit. I could be like, you're a piece of shit, but I say it so nice that I could just tell someone looks at me and goes, I think he's right. I am a no good, dirty piece of shit. Yeah, because he said it, and he said it politely. Like, you know what, man? You go out there, you give everything you got, but you're just such a piece of shit. And they're just like, oh, yeah, you're right. I am. So we just get caught in this moment, and you talk about it all the time. That you're like, I hope. One of your biggest fears is I hope people are listening to what we're saying. And it's like, man, I listen to Busted Open. I listen to Jim Cornette. I listen to Steven Richards. I listen to JD from NY. I listen to Vince Russo. I listen to the European guy that has some of these podcasters I see, they got The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels on there. And I'm like, man, I wish I could have had this or can have this opportunity to do this. Cause you know what? We're going to put them over. They're going to be going over, man. Like these are opportunities now that I want, that you should want, that we should want as a combined. And we have to listen to each other, man. So you are so right with everything that you tell me all the time. And sometimes I'm just like, man, Paul, just go fucking tell that person that right now and say it just like I'm talking right now.
Right, exactly. We had you just talked about wanting it, right? Wanting to be a pro wrestler, and it triggered my thought process of Saturday. We got ready to do our training session, and I had a kid talking to me about being able to afford it, right? And I was just like, man, is this something that you really want to do? Because I've heard it hundreds of times, and people think that I'm just over exaggerating. And it's like, no, really, we've had hundreds of people come through our wrestling school, and I've heard the story 100 times about how bad I want it, right? And you and I have talked about this so many times. Been a lifelong wrestling fan, always wanted to get into the business, but somehow I waited until I was 35 or 40 years old to take, take that step and jump in there and start training. But you always love it when those guys, and I'm very honest with these guys when they contact me at a young age, 14, 15 years old. Hey, I want to be a pro wrestler. I always do the same thing. Go start amateur wrestling, right? Start amateur wrestling, go get into it, right? Because all of that amateur wrestling stuff is going to roll right into pro wrestling if that's what you end up wanting to do. You're going to be way better pro wrestler as an amateur wrestler than you would be if you didn't go into that. So I always give them that avenue. Go amateur wrestler, be an amateur wrestler. If you get back to me, you're 17, 18 years old, and it's still your dream, then you're invited right in. We'll start training you, get you going, right? So that's what you want. So I'm talking to this kid about that, and I said, I've heard the story 100 times, man. And he's like, no, really, when, if I could be here every day, I would, but I'm still in high school, right? But as soon as I'm done with high school, I'm doing this full time. And I think just based off of you and I seeing the kid, you believe that it's going to happen, right? It's not the kid that's making excuses about why he can't be there. Literally, this kid he comes from an hour and a half away. It was like, hey, I know there's some other people that come from this distance. Can I get their number? Because he's trying to get here as much as he can. We got 4 training sessions a week, and he's trying to figure it out. How can he get here more times than just the one time or the 2 times? So that's
transfer high school if you want it bad enough, kid. God.
Oh wow, jeez, I didn't even think about that, but that's what you do, right? It's like, hey, wrestling season's over. Just transfer to this school, stay at this guy's house right over by the school.
It's so interesting because I always tell, you tell people amateur wrestling because, of course, it's going to transfer over to pro wrestling on the mat. If there's acting and drama classes, obviously weightlifting, and people seem to think that pro wrestling is this individual sport. I'm worried about myself unless I'm in a tag team or something. They're like, oh, then it becomes a team sport. No, it's a fucking team sport. You're working as a team with your opponent. You're working as a team with the referee, the manager, the guys on commentary, the promoter. You're working honestly as a team with the fans to manipulate them to do what you want when you want them to do them. It's organized sports, man. Get used to working with people. People get in this business and they're like, it's about me. It's all it's about. I'm worried about myself. And it's like, no. Worrying about yourself. Look at the Ultimate Warrior. He was worried about himself. He's gone. Not just the fact that he's dead, but he's gone. Vince was like, hey, you're making me a lot of money. You're a star, but you got to go. Because it's not about you. It's about everything around you. And I don't think people get that enough. This is one big team. It doesn't mean that we're all brothers and sisters. It doesn't mean that we're best friends. We're friendly with each other. We're acquaintances that see each other once in a while. Like I have my friends. I consider you a friend. I talk to you every day. We do a podcast together. This is a business we got going on that we're banking, not banking to make millions, which would be nice, but like this is something that we're committed to. We're committed to going to each other's shows. We're committed to working with you. You're my friend. You know if I eat at Denny's in the morning, you're one of the guys that's going to know. And I always tell people they're so worried about everybody else. And I say, well, you gotta be able to work with these people. But is that your friend? Does that person know that you're going to bed? Does that person know when it's okay to call you? Does that person know what you have going on with your day? And when you look around, you go, I talk to this guy because wrestling, solely because of wrestling. We have nothing to do with each other outside of wrestling. You know what I mean? Like if wrestling died tomorrow, even if me and you talked about it, we would still call each other on the phone just to talk some shit because we like talking to each other. So yeah, you're my friend, you know, and I have friends in the wrestling business, and a lot of my friends are in the wrestling business because this is what I'm committed to. So I'm not going to have a million friends outside the wrestling business because we're not on the same team with the same dream, man. So that's what when you say same team, same dream, wrestling's not individual. Wrestling as a whole, especially when you're trying to run a promotion, you got to have a good team around you. And it takes a while to build that good team. I'm starting to watch you really start to formulate some of the players here and there that you need. So yeah, it's just, man, there's so much that goes into this. I like this podcast today because we started off with something, but I think today has really been informative on, I mean, how we should look at the business.
Absolutely. You talked about being friends in the business and being teammates and things like that. And as much as we're teammates, there's also that friendly competition. I remember you and Adam talking about it was if you guys got into the ring together, you guys are going to have a banger, right? You guys are going to have a banger if you guys got in there together. But you guys also had that rivalry, that competition where you knew if he was on the show, you need to be at your best, and vice versa, right? Because it wasn't necessarily like we're on the same team, we've got the same goals. Like we have the same goal, but if he gets it, I can't have it. And if I get it, he can't have it. So there's that competition as well, which I think is so vital for the business because it's not a hatred. I don't want you to fail, right? I want you to do well. But because I want you to do well, I'm pushing myself to do well as well because I don't want you to do better than me, but I don't want to do better than you because you failed. I want to do better than you because I just put in more work, right? I'm just at my peak right now, and you're up there as well. So we need to have that as well. And we've talked so many times about Illuminate and Travis Alexander, but those are the guys right off the top of my head right now. Right after I talked about you and Adam, those are the guys right now in my mind. They're like those dudes are pushing each other, right? Because Illuminate is not going to let Travis Alexander be better than him, and vice versa, right? You could see the confidence in Travis's eyes when he talks to you. He wants to be really good at this. Illuminate wants to be really good at this, and I think right now, in our scene, those are the guys that I think of right now that are pushing each other to be the best. And in turn, other guys are seeing that as well. It's like, well, I want to be in that mix also, so I better step my game up. Arsonist is on that upward trajectory, right? Getting himself in great shape. Like you're seeing that stuff. Now Dickie has to do that too, right? Because you've got these rivalries. These guys just happen to be in the same storyline together, but it's guys that are around each other and they're seeing, oh, this dude's stepping his game up. I better do the same. Otherwise, I'm going to get left behind.
They want that spot, man. You want that spot.
Right. Of course. So, and you hear so much that people say, if you're not in this to be the world heavyweight champion, then what are you doing? But obviously in our smaller promotions, for my promotion, if you're not in this to be the Nevada state champ, then what are you doing? In your promotion, if you're not in it to be the heavyweight champ, or you're not in it to be the IC champ, like I think all of these things have such a great role, right? Because it's not going to be there's only focus on this specific championship. There's going to be storylines with everything, so wherever your niche is, that's where you should be focusing your energy, and you're watching other people around you get to those things and earn the pat on the back that you want to get. Hopefully that's pushing everybody else to do the same, right? I'm seeing this guy get in great shape. I better get in great shape. This guy's increasing his work rate. I better do the same, right? How do I keep up with these guys that are doing the things that I want to do and that are in the positions and are getting the pushes and getting the bookings that I want to get? Are you pushing yourself to do that, or are you good with working in front of 35 fans? You know, what is your goal? Is that what it is? Is that good enough? Do I want to work in front of 35 fans? Do I want to work with guys that maybe I look at and they come out there in a t-shirt and they don't look like pro wrestlers? Am I satisfied with doing that stuff, or do I want more? Like you gotta look at it and see, you know. And obviously for me, it comes from that training aspect. Do I want to be a pro wrestler? Do I want to put in the time to become a pro wrestler? You know, and we've kind of glossed over it over this entire episode. You know, whether it's the not getting in the ring when there's a training opportunity because you think you're already above that. Do you not come to training as much because you feel like, oh, I'm already trained enough and I don't need to learn enough, more stuff? Or is it, am I good with where I'm at on the card and I don't need to have that top spot where I'm in the main event where I'm the guy that's drawing all the fans to the show because they want to see what I'm going to do that night. So I think
now I don't want those people around. Whether they were my friends in the past or whatever, I don't want those people around. Like if you're 40 something years of age and you haven't gone anywhere, if PCW's the high, if you've been doing this 10 whatever years and PCW's the highest platform that you've been on and you've never made a living at doing this, if you don't have something else to offer, like to help the company or help yourself to find another job, if you're still that age thinking that, you know, my big break's coming, haven't had it yet, but it's coming. No, it's not. It's you know, when guys don't want to train, I'm pushed away. I don't want a guy, you know, my coach had to get me really into this, buy into it, I guess you would say. I don't want a guy there for 2 years training unless he's taking a coaching responsibility or something on. I don't want him there. If you're still at my school after 2 something years, milling around, not doing nothing, there's a good chance you're not paying me any more money. That's a spot for money. That's a spot for another hungry guy. Get the fuck out of here. I don't. Go somewhere, go do something. And if you're not going to go somewhere and go do something, explain that to me when you first get there. Say, hey, I just want to do this. You know, I just want to learn how to do this. And good. Okay. The course is 12 months. Here's what it costs. I'm going to train you for 12 months and then you can go do whatever you want to do, but you can't be here no more. You got to get out of here because I need that competition. I need that competitiveness. I need to see people that have a desire to do something bigger. It's, you know, when I came down and was working with your guys, they were all humble. They were just all good. They were just all good kids and they were athletic. And it's nice to be in the ring. It steps your game up as a coach sometimes, because my game was stepped up as a coach that day. Because there was people that cared and I cared, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Now we all care. So let's get down to the brass tacks of this thing. And then sometimes you walk in the building, whether it's been a long night or the night before, and you walk in and you see who's there and you're just like, whatever, I don't care. And it's hard sometimes to keep that motivation to care because you see guys that are around that you're like, this guy doesn't give a shit, man. And he's here. It's my promotion, and this dickhead is dragging my motivation down just by being here. Get rid of that guy.
Absolutely. Hey, we got 1 minute, and it's and I know you got somewhere to be, and I definitely got somewhere to be. It's my wife's over here on this side.
She's giving you the
side. Oh yeah, it's waving the pencil. She's like,
and for you young kids, the reason you use a pencil and Zack Reeb uses a pen, the reason they say the pencil is because when you're booking, you might have to erase a name and write another one. Well, Zack Reeb uses the big pen, and the reason is Zack Reeb doesn't erase nothing. He wants to remember who he had to scratch a couple lines through, and I'll just start on a new page because that's what we do, ladies and gentlemen. We're in the wrestling business. I'm Zack Primetime Reeb, and that's the Wrecking Ball, Paul Isadora. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going over.